Interesting, interesting question from Mari. You say, is there a wild dog that will protect the young if a predator comes? I'm not really sure how to answer that. They are very defensive. They will definitely try and defend each other, absolutely. And they certainly always leave a nursemaid, Mari. I'll always leave a nursemaid with the youngsters when they're at the den site. So yes, from that point of view, they would defend them. The main defense of young wild dogs is to go down into the hole when they're at the den. Right now, though, they are vulnerable. They're very, very vulnerable. These guys would definitely defend against a leopard. Against a lion, they'd really struggle, because lions, of course, are a huge amount bigger. And yeah, hyenas, absolutely, they'd defend against. And we've seen them taking on hyenas and doing some serious damage to hyenas. They've all lain down again, as predicted, Brian. Sometimes it's nice when your predictions come true. Otherwise, sometimes it isn't, because you really want them to go hunting. But they're so full-bellied, you know, I'm not sure they're going to do a huge amount of hunting today. There's that very obvious collar. Rob, your question is about how often it is that we see dogs with their pups. How common is that? Rob, it's the only time you see the pups, really. You don't often see the pups on their own. And, you know, they're completely seasonal breeders. I'm just going to answer both ways your question could be interpreted. They're completely seasonal breeders, which means that they will give birth every year in the winter, sometime in the winter time, because that's when it's easiest for them to hunt, being coursers. The bush is more open, and so it's easier for them to feed the pups during the winter time. And so it's not uncommon, if you're seeing wild dogs in the winter, that you should find out where their den is or know where their den is and be able to see the pups with the adults. That is very common for the winter time. We haven't had a den on Djuma since I've been here. I mean, I've only been here now 18 months or so 2 wild dog seasons, but we haven't had any dens here. You haven't ever heard of a den on Djuma, have you, Brian?
No.
I think it has happened once or twice, but like I say, they roam so widely. We thought they might den last year, and they den just inside the Manuleti away from us. A different pack, not this pack. Manuleti is a reserve just to the north of where we are. All unfenced, of course. We're part of 8.5 million acres of contiguous wildlife land. That's 3.5 million hectares. A vast, vast area. And that light has faded again. You can see the light gets flat. And if those dogs were to go walking through this woodland now, and there happened to be a steenbok or a duiker or some impala or maybe a bushbuck through there, I think that'd be pretty difficult to see. But the adults don't look like they're going nowhere. And Sandy, no, not quite. The dispersal of wild dogs is quite it's an interesting one. It's not always very easy to describe. Look at that fat belly there. Sandy, you're wanting to know if it's males that always get kicked out in the same way that lions get kicked out of a pride. Normally, Sandy, no. The youngsters, probably from about 2 years old, will disperse in single-sex groups. So the females from a litter will go off together, and then the males from that same litter will go off together, and they will then join up with males or females from other packs. So no, they disperse pretty much equally. I don't think, as far as I'm aware, that any dogs, I'm sure it has happened, but I don't think, as far as I'm aware, that any dogs stay within their natal pack for life. So that certainly would be extremely uncommon. Now they're all starting to settle down, except the 3 in front of us there. Brian, shall I move a bit, or are you happy here? I think we could probably manage here for now. I can't believe we're being able to... I nearly didn't come here today, everyone. I thought there are going to be so many vehicles coming, so I thought it would be terrible. But it's been marvellous. We've now been here more than an hour. Brilliant. Even though they're snoozing, there's a little bit of action going on. Now, you see the ear posture there? That's classic posture of an Omega dog. Also a dog who's just folded its ears by mistake. But I think that's that's Omega behavior. And you must watch this with your own dogs. I'm sure many of you have got dogs, and you'll take them to the park and they'll play with other dogs, and you'll put there, look at that. It's so clear. You'll be able to tell immediately if they are alpha dogs or if they're Omega dogs, because domestic dogs do exactly the same thing. They either feel dominant or they don't, and that probably comes from their litter mates, and I suspect they hold on to that kind of status for life. Now they're up. They're all up, everybody. Here we go. Take your dentures out. Tip out whatever drinks you've got. I think the dogs are going on a hunt. This is marvellous. Hang on, we've got something going on right behind us. I just don't want to run anyone over. The buffalo coming this way from the other side of Cheetah Plains there. Not Cheetah Plains and Coral. Watch this. Now, we can't cross this boundary, but the dogs can. And I can't wait to see what those buffalo do. I'm just going to drive onto the road and then stop so that Brian's got a nice smooth shot. There you go, Brian. So this is as far as we can go, I'm afraid. But you see how quickly they got up? They don't mess around like lions do, taking ages to get up and decide what to do. Isn't that fantastic? There are the buffalo. Now, I mean, the chances of them killing a buffalo are negligible to zero, except that the buffalo, as we know, have been very, very weakened this year by the drought, and I'm pretty sure by tuberculosis as well. I still don't think these dogs are going to take on a buffalo. Isn't that a beautiful shot? Hey? Look at that. You can put your dentures back in, everybody, if you want to. Brian, are yours back in?
Mine are back in.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Excellent.
But I did waste my drink.
You did waste your drink. I'm so sorry about that.
Okay.
I'll pour you another one shortly.
Thank you.
Oh, what a wonderful shot. I'm just slightly sad the light has decided to desert us at this stage. Now, while the male went off towards them, I don't think he was ever particularly serious about trying to get hold of a buffalo. Behind him, the rest are looking around. Now, they get up very suddenly and they're going to make a hunting effort here. I don't think with those buffalo, of course. But I think they're going to try and hunt something. And the buffalo are doing that kind of... how would we describe it, Brian? A kind of reluctant amble.
Yeah.
That's the boundary, isn't it? Or am I on the boundary? No, that's the boundary. We can go a few meters forward. And then we'll have to stop, I'm afraid. I'll check with Ryan. Right, another question coming through here. No, just a survey comment from Rebecca, which I shan't tell you about. Too nasty it was. Isn't it amazing, that hunting instinct? Now, we were talking a little bit earlier about the fact that, the cats will kill other predators, which they do, of course, but it's just instinct. It's the instinct to hunt. Now, Sandra, are the wild dogs your favourite in the bush? They are, Sandra, it's because I am at heart a closet anthropomorphicist. That means I really like to almost unconsciously put human emotions into animals. And wild dogs, to me, they're exciting, but they also are very egalitarian. They look after each other. They look after the sick and the lame and the infirm. They look after their old ones. They're completely unlike lions, of course, which are like, they are so much the mafia of the bush. They don't look after each other. They'll kill each other at the drop of a hat. And then they pretend to be friends when they're hunting, of course, and then they try and eat together, and they swat at each other and pull each other's fur and scratch each other, whereas wild dogs are just not like that at all. And I just really like the fact that they live in an egalitarian society, beautifully coloured. And there's always been something about a wolf to me. And these, of course, are the great wolves of Africa. And I would love to see a grey wolf one day, or pack of them. Ever since I read the book White Fang, I'm sure many of you will have read White Fang as youngsters. You read White Fang? You watched the movie? Oh, was he? Rebecca says she also loved White Fang. She doesn't say whether it was the movie or the book. Sabrina, you're just 13, and I'm just going to get your question quickly. Oh, Sabrina, you say, I don't know which documentary this was. It's interesting. You say you've seen a documentary where wild dogs try to raise a jackal pup. Sabrina, I've not seen it. I don't know which one you're talking about, but I have heard of similar things happening. And I'm not sure it's not the same group of dogs. There's a group of dogs, or one female dog, who lives with a jackal. And I don't know if she still does, but she certainly used to. She lives with a jackal and its mate and their pups, and that's at Mombo in Botswana. And she used to go and hunt for them, basically. She used to look after them. The jackal would kind of help a little bit behind, and then she'd bring meat back for the adults and the pups to the den. And eventually that little arrangement was a hyena female as well, and the hyena just used to sort of steal off the arrangement. But they'd all lie and rest together during the middle of the day around a termite mound where the little jackal puppies lived. And the jackal adults obviously a little bit weary of the hyena, but of the dogs, not of the dog, the single female dog, not in the slightest. And so, Sabrina, if it is a different documentary, then I have heard of it happening, yeah. I don't know if it's happened once. I bet over the course of evolutionary time it's happened 100 times. Now, this is a good direction they're heading. They're heading into Cheetah Plains. That is good news, because those buffalo are in Nkoro. Right, okay, Brian, we got action. Going to move a little bit so we can watch them move. Starting to get a bit nippy out here, isn't it? So I think that's probably the alpha in front there, the alpha male. It's definitely a male. And so almost certainly the alpha male. Now, the rest of the pack will come up in the order, probably the alpha female behind. Let me just get me binoculars out. That'll be the alpha female. Yes, it is. And that's interesting. That's the collared female. So that's from the Ngala pack. The other collared one is a male. In fact, they're all... Okay, so there are two females, one with a collar, one without. In fact, there are three. Sorry, I'm not talking nonsense. Two females, three males. And there come the little pups. Now, Tucker, you're just 4 years old watching with us, and it's so lovely to have you with us, Tucker. You say, is the collar like the collar you'd get on a puppy? Yes, it's exactly the same, except this one's very clever, Tucker. It sends information into space, and that information we can then get. Well, we can't get it here, but there's a special fellow who can get it on his computer, and then he can tell exactly where these pups are all the time. So it's just the same. Just thinking about picking a direction of where to go and what to go for. There are dogs all over the Sabi Sand at the moment, everyone. I keep getting little notifications here and there that there's a pack here, a pack there, here a pack, there a pack, everywhere. There we go, Brian. Thank you. Well done. Not many of you would have got that, Brian. You know, you do have a rare talent for that sort of stuff.
I do what I can.
You do what you can. Wonderful to watch them play like this. I'm just putting my jacket on. Hope that the zip does up this time. Many of you apparently keep looking at your own phones when you hear a ping because of mine pinging. I'm sorry about that. We're going to stay with these dogs. Let's see if they don't go off on the hunt. While we do that, Taylor's got something much larger to show you.
We've come across 2 elephants. Now, you'll see them here. Oh, maybe there's more than 2. I only just counted 2 just to begin with. We've got this female, and she's a little bit stressed. She showed a little bit of agitation with us, but now she seems to have settled down quite a bit. You can see that she's starting to feed. Let's see what she's going to do now. She comes out into the open. Hello, big girl. You can see she's got swollen memory, so I wonder if she's not perhaps a little bit stressed because she's got a calf on the way. I don't see any really small calves, but there's her older calf just to the left. You can see just feeding in the thicket. But much older calf, probably, well, maybe it's not even her calf, maybe it's a sibling or something. It's quite unusual, but we'll just keep our distance, and you can see the impala leaping across the road. I don't know what spooked them, but they're not alarming and doing particularly big leaps. Woo! Wow! Did you see that one? That was an incredible... Oh, and another one. Try and get a screenshot of them and the elephant as they leap across the road. That could be quite spectacular. Come on, who's going to do another massive leap? Rebecca says that the impala are not jumping high enough. There were 1 or 2 though that did a spectacular leap, and I thought that was extremely impressive, and it really does just show you that they are the long distance jumping champions in Africa. Obviously I think that they are, but I'm also quite fond of impala. Now I'm not sure if that's a sibling of hers, the one elephant on the right. It looks like it is a young bull. They're now disappearing. Let's go up towards them, because the age gap sort of seems to be quite large there for it to maybe be her son. Maybe it was a young bull that's been slightly separated, and now he's joined up with this female who seems to be traveling on her own, which is also quite unusual. But you know, in times of a drought like this, you tend to see some bizarre things, like that Willie next door hanging around the carcass. No, I am wrong. I think the rest of the herd is up ahead. Aha, that's interesting. They're very quiet, but they're very, very far in the distance. So it must be just a little satellite party hanging at the back. Very sneaky, madam. So like I said, she wasn't too happy with us, so maybe we'll actually try and head up ahead and find the rest of the herd. Let's see how this lovely boy is. Hello. Are you relaxed with us? It's okay. A little bit nervous of us, but we'll just keep our distance. He seems to be relaxing now again, also going in to feed. Now, Andrine and Marie, you were wondering if the drought will affect the coloring of the animal. Now, you're actually right, but I'm not sure in the way that you may think that you're right. And the reason how it affects the animals, not typically an elephant, but if you look at an impala or a kudu and even a buffalo, because they're not able to eat and get all the nutrition that they need, they're lacking sort of various minerals that will provide that lovely luster that they have on their coats, and their coats tend to become quite sort of shaggy and dull in color. So you're quite correct in saying that, but it's just because they're not getting the nutrients that they need. Now he's got rather large tusks considering the size of him. He doesn't look particularly old, probably around 10 or 11 years old. He's got lovely long tusks. But I've seen this before. He's not, like I say, he's not particularly large in size, so he could still grow quite bigger, much bigger, sorry. But I've also seen it where you see these elephants that are much smaller in body size. They don't quite even get to 5 tons. They sort of get to the size of a large female. And then they, of course, have these massive tusks. And that, of course, is just genetics. Now, you heard that trumpet, that scream. And that sounded like a young elephant calf throwing a tantrum. Now, that was that young elephant bull, maybe responding to that youngster. You can see she's very relaxed, but he had his ears slightly flared, and as he moves away, tusks can never get so long that they touch the ground. They can indeed. I'm going to tell you a story now. Let's try and find some elephants to have a look at. There are quite a few here, but they're in the thicket. Now, I think I also have a slow puncture, so I'm just watching my tire. Okay, I'm going to stop on a bit of an angle just because we've got a little gap. Now, there we go. Sorry, so David, to get back to your question about the elephant's sort of length of tusks and if they can reach the ground, I wonder if any of you have ever heard of the Magnificent Seven. Now, if you haven't, this would be a good idea to jump onto the World Wide Web and perhaps type that in, and you will see the most impressive elephants that ever roamed this greater Kruger area. Now, they were believed to have had the mammoth gene in them because their tusks didn't curve like we typically see with the African elephant. They grew straight down towards the ground, which was very typical of the woolly mammoths. And they were ginormous. They weighed anywhere between 6 and 7 tons. They were much larger than the normal big bulls that we get. But unfortunately, they are no longer around, as some of them were poached, some of them were hunted, some of them just died of old age. And there's a couple of museums that have their tusks in the various rest camps within the Kruger National Park. So if you ever come and visit, it'll be good having a look. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Letaba is one area that has a museum that actually showcases the beautiful tusks and, of course, a picture of what some of those elephants look like. Now, I've heard stories that up in the northern areas of Kruger, where there are no roads, they're completely untouched areas, you can go in on foot, and even then it's restricted to just sort of researchers. They say that they've seen some young bulls with massive tusks that they think carry that Magnificent Seven gene, which is very exciting. But, of course, we're not looking at one of the elephants that belong in the Magnificent Seven at the moment. We're looking at a lovely elephant and her calf. And they look like ordinary elephants, but an ordinary elephant is pretty spectacular as it is. Now, Gareth, welcome. I believe you've just started watching, so it's great to hear from you, and keep asking those questions. Now, you were wondering how many elephant bulls do we have in the area. Now, unfortunately, that's a tough one to try and answer, as typically a herd of elephants is made up of females. So it's a matriarchal cycle. So it's a system. So it's elephants that are either mothers or granddaughters or sisters or aunts, you name it. They're closely related, and the bulls get kicked out of the herd, so they don't stay in them for very long, normally up to about between 16 and 18 years. They then get sort of said to cheerio, off you go, and live a life on your own. I'm just going to move up again and see if we can get another view. So it's quite difficult to say. I don't even feel comfortable with trying to estimate a number, but there's quite a few thousand elephants in this greater Kruger area. Remember, there's 8.5 million acres of wilderness. And the last statistic I read, that just for the Sabi Sand, which is about 135,000 acres of land, but we're all open to the Kruger National Park, and we're incorporated in the greater Kruger area. But the last census I read, I think it was for 2015, it must have been last year's one, They estimated us to have about 6,000 elephants. Now that is a huge number for such a small piece of land. When I say small, it's really massive. But of course, elephants are giant creatures, and they need to feed and eat at least 5% of their body weight every single day. So you can imagine, like this elephant is doing, it's munching away, and it needs to do that for 19 hours a day. So when you start saying these sizes of the land, with the amount of elephants that are on 135,000 acres, wow, that's really not a lot, and they'll go through the food very quickly. And that's why we start to see them pushing over the trees, is that when they've exhausted all the grass, exhausted all the leaves, in the drier months, they've got to start, and they become sort of destructive. They've got to start turning the trees over to eat the roots, like what I think this elephant is going to try and do. So, very difficult question to answer. How many elephant bulls? Lots and lots and lots of them. At one point, they were even taking some of the elephant bulls out of their greater Kruger area and relocating them to places all over Africa, just because there were too many of them, and it's easier to remove the bulls rather than to try and remove an entire family group of elephants. This little one is struggling though with breaking this tree, but you can see now how he's going to use his feet. There we go, and hook it and then pull it straight out of the ground. Now watch how he's going to pop the bottom end of that tree into his mouth. Wonderful. And this is quite nice to see as well. There's the twisting motion, the sort of corkscrew action that you can see him doing to twist the bark off. That was a fantastic example. And now he's going to munch on that. And the layer that they're going for is, even though this one took in the outer layer, it's not as coarse and hard like you see on a marula tree, for example. It's quite thin, that outer layer. But essentially, like most of you have known, but there are quite a few new viewers today, so we'll just recap so they can all catch up, is they go after the cambium layer. You can see where that yellowish flesh is exposed. They're going for the layer just above that, which the elephant is now stripping off. And that is where the nutrients are transported from the roots all the way to the leaves, and that's got lots of moisture and, of course, whatever specific minerals each tree has. And we typically see them doing that in the drier seasons. Doesn't seem to be too fond though of the monkey orange leaves. Much more preferring the bark. That's okay. And there's a couple of roots on the end which should be quite juicy as well. So we'll see if he gets to them at the end. Now, Hunter, you were wondering if it was true or not if an elephant uses their trunk like a sensor, and you're definitely right. They've got an incredible sense of smell, and the tip of their trunk is very sensitive. You see, there we go, just how this elephant is sort of popping its trunk over the top of that branch, seeing if there's perhaps another juicy bit that it missed. So you're quite right. I think they pick up vibrations in their feet, of course, but I wonder if they're able to sense through their trunk and sort of feel things as well. They've also got lots of little hairs, quite sort of tough bristles around the trunk, and they'll be quite sensitive too. So when you even see them eating from a thorn tree, you see how delicate they are. And be careful not to prick themselves, of course, on the thorns. But I did just also get the go-ahead. I'm quite excited, is that they've said that we can come back to the lion sighting, to go back to the Nkuhumas. Now, I'm sure you are very, very excited to do that. So I don't want to waste too much time. I think we're going to start heading that way. Gareth, I'm glad that you were happy with my answer. It's difficult to know everything out here, so we just guess, especially when it comes to sort of the numbers and the densities of animals, because they've got such a big area. But I'm glad. Keep on watching, asking lots of questions. It's a great platform to learn new things. Not just you learning every single day, but even us out here in the bush. Now we're going to start making our way back down towards where those lions were. They're not high in the sky as they were, and obviously that's also an indication to us when we think we're going to get rain, as if the clouds are too high, well then no need to worry. But they've come in very quickly from the east. So we're going to have to watch out for these, of course. You know, we've got all this fancy equipment and we don't want to get it wet. So keep your fingers crossed though, and hope that literally at 7 o'clock, just as we finish the show, it starts to pour with rain. That's what I'm hoping. But it seems as though we've got 2 buffalo up ahead. So the lions will just have to wait a little bit longer. I also want to just turn the radio up. We want to hear what's going on. Hello buffalo, you two are not looking very well, I'm afraid. Hello girl. Now you can see this is a buffalo cow that we've now spotted. And they're very typical, pointing the nose to the sky and looking towards us. And even though she's thin, her coat doesn't look too bad. You can see her ribs obviously and her hips sticking out. But her nose is lovely and shiny and wet, which we know is a good thing. Very much like your pets at home. I'm sure you look at your cat and your dog's nose quite often to see if they're well or not. And of course when you know it's dry and crusty, that they're feeling a bit under the weather. Now this buffalo is looking a bit worse than the cow did. You can definitely see a difference, and this looks like a young bull. And he's covered in mud. He's obviously trying to cool down earlier today. And it's sad, it seems as though they go towards the water and spend a bit of time down there. Now, I believe that those wild dogs are up and moving around, which is very exciting, so let's not waste too much time here. Let's go back over to Cheetah Plains and have another look.
We're live, everybody, we're live. Hello. Sorry, a little bit discombobulated. Rebecca, try the radio now, we might get you in this area. The dogs have just got up and they've started running down this way, and we're about to head into the clearings beyond which is Mala Mala. So I'm not sure how long we're going to be able to stay with them. And for those of you who are perhaps new viewers, the animals can come and go from the properties that we're on as they please. We can't. We have our unfortunate human property laws that we have to look after. The adults are in front here. Here come the pups behind us. We'll just have a quick look at them, and then I'm going to move quite quickly to the adults because we want to be with the adults. This is what happens when they're on the hunt. The pups, of course, get distracted. They're so cute. And they will hang back now. He's just picked up a nice... Brian, the one at the back, picked up the stick to carry. There we go. He's got his toy. Wonderful stuff. And the smell, I got to tell you, look, I know smelly dog is a horrible smell if you're in the home, but out here it's just the smell of excitement. Oh, this is just fantastic. So the adults still up in front, don't worry about them. I'm keeping an eye on them while Brian shows you this rather fascinating behaviour, piece of bark being torn to shreds, which of course is going to happen to whatever they catch for dinner. I think there's often a bit of a thought that wild dogs are merciless killers of animals, and that they don't kill their prey first, and so they're much crueler. Anyone who's been watching the Nkuhuma Pride of late will know that that just simply isn't the case. The death to wild dog prey comes a huge amount faster than it comes to the buffalo. They struggle and struggle and struggle. Good, well, things have calmed down a little now. I'm just rather wishing that we had a little bit more prey activity. And of course they're heading perfectly into the wind. Now whether that is by design or not, I'm not sure. Some people will tell you that these predators know which way the wind is blowing, and they take cognizance of it, knowing that their prey can smell them. I think with dogs that might be the truth. With lions it's been shown to be fairly random, and I think that's because lions don't smell very strong. Certainly, I mean, I couldn't tell you what a lion smelled like. Could you, Brian? Can you think of a lion's smell?
I don't know.
No, I can't. Right, here we go. We want them to come up this way. We don't want them rushing off towards Mala Mala. Yeah, that's an interesting one from Jackie. Of course, we're continuing the theme of comparing them with domestic dogs. Jackie, you say they wag their tails when they're happy. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, they do. They definitely wag their tails when they're happy. I don't think quite as obviously as domestic dogs do, but there does seem to be a fair amount of tail wagging when they're feeling joyful about life. When they're approaching each other, though, they tend to put the tail down if they're not dominant, if they're omega, and if they're dominant, if they're alpha, the tail tends to be sort of stuck straight out behind them. The smell is quite strong. Oh, here we go. Grabbed a little piece of a broken down ziziphus there. Might have it actually attached to its lip because that thing is a thorny branch. It's knobthorn actually. Okay, the adults are moving off to the side now. See that, Brian? They've gone through the woodland. Now the little ones, not moving with them, mainly because I don't think they've realized that they've been left behind just yet. I'm going to go around them. Oops. Simply because I do not want to lose those adults. If they go herring after something now, Brian, can you see them at all? Everyone, we're going to leave the little pups for now. No, there, I can see them. They are through there. Yeah, the pups are going to follow the adults. Now, we have two choices. One, we go after them. They're going north again. So I think we're going to have to head in. Are you going to go round? Okay. Brian, at least Ryan from Arathusa is going to go round to the other side there, and I think that's the best approach, because I'm not sure. Come on, Wendy. Come on, baby. Let's go. Did I just say that, Brian? Did I just call Wendy baby? Alright, hold on everybody. I'm going to try and keep my distance. We're going to try and do this as sensitively as possible. They headed off left and right as far as I can tell. Watch your heads, everyone. And Ryan has gone around to the clearing, so he might be able to see them. I can still see them. There we go. I'm just going to quickly try and find the radio. Try not to break the car. It's important not to break the car, Brian. Yes. Try not to use the cameraman, who's obviously not a small fellow. Ryan, they're going due east through this block. Try and find some questions to answer on my telephone. If I'm not answering questions, everybody, if you lose them, we can link to Taylor. She's ready. Okay, right, we're going to try and stay with them for a second. Just quickly try again. Alright, I think it's going to get quite hairy in here, everybody. Let's head back to Taylor. I think she's back with the lions, and I will try and keep up with these chaps and keep you posted when you come back.
We're not quite there yet. Now, there you go. A zebra just bolted into the distance. My goodness, why are you running away from us like that? Here it is. No, it's stopping. Maybe we just gave it a little bit of a fright. But we're not going to stick too long with the zebra. The reason being is because we don't have really a sun this evening because the clouds are so thick. It's going to limit our time with the Nkuhumas. So we want to go around and try and get there as quick as possible. But we're not too far away now. We're a wee distance away, but we'll hopefully try and catch up. Ooh, a little bumpy bump. and then we'll get there. We're on Mamba. I think we're on Mamba. We're on Twin Dams now, aren't we? Here we go. So we're on Twin Dams. We won't be there. It won't take us too much longer. We'll just bounce around a little bit. So just bear with me as we head on over. Vroom. And I wonder what they're up to now. Hopefully they've started eating. That would be quite exciting, I think. Right. I wonder where Karula is as well. That was something I've been thinking about the entire time, is wondering where she is and where she's disappeared to. We obviously had her tracks earlier this morning, and we know that she doesn't bring those little cubs over for no reason, so she must have a kill somewhere in the drainage line. But it's just becoming more and more difficult now to spot kills from the road with all the vegetation greening up as the rainy season comes into play. But that means we've got to do a lot more walking, of course, and then getting off of the vehicle. And I don't know about anybody else, I'm a little bit nervous still of the buffalo after my buffalo incident. So I'm always quite cautious, and well, we know how much the buffalo love drainage lines. So hopefully tomorrow morning, if they have gone to drink, if then they've come out of a drainage line, hopefully we'll see their tracks crossing on the road. I'm not sure if Aubrey or anyone went to go and have a look and see if they could find anything on those tracks, but I'm sure after this afternoon having a great lion sighting, that's probably, well, what we'll be doing and looking for in the morning. Good evening. They're having a sundowner, but I suppose you can't call it a sundowner this evening. It's more of a cloud downer. And that's one of the fun things that you get to do when you go on safari, is stop and stretch your legs and eat lots and lots of snacks and drink a variety of beverages. Now, I don't know if any of you watching have ever been on safari before. Oh, right. Okay, I'll get back to that story. Let's go to James, who's back with the dogs.
We're live. Okay, everybody. They're on the hunt. They're Impala in front of them. They are heading straight for the Kruger Park, though. Brian and I had quite a time getting through there. Brian's instinct was exactly correct. He knew exactly where they were coming. Now look, they're in the stalking mode. The Impala have seen them, but that doesn't matter. Here we go. Doesn't matter that the Impala have seen them. They're alarming, and now they're off. Here we go. Okay, now we're going to stay relatively close behind them, but if they go into thick stuff, everyone, well, we need to follow, hopefully, the Alpha. He's headed off straight through there in front of us. Now they're slowing down. I'm going to cut the engine here, just so that we don't rev them. The little ones, very cute, running behind, and they're wonderfully running straight back into Cheetah Plains. I'm going to cut the engine again. I'm not going to make too much noise. The little pups are off to the left-hand side, trying desperately to keep up, failing at this stage, but they'll catch up if there's a kill. We're just going to push straight through this open area. Ryan's going around the other side. They went straight into the thick stuff here. Now we're going to have to be a little bit careful. Try and stay a little bit further behind. There. Off to the left, Brian. I think there's an adult there. They don't look like they've killed, though. I'm going to turn off so that they can talk to each other. I'm not going to make a noise now. We're just going to wait and see. Oh, they're all there. They're all there. The whole pack. They're still chasing. Going due, Ryan. They're going straight west. I think they've cornered something in here. Everybody. The pack is now all heading southeast towards the first clearings where we were. It looks to me like they just look like they may have surrounded something. I'm sorry if you're sending through questions, everybody, but if I look at my phone now, we're definitely going to have an accident. Yeah, Ryan, we've got visual. They're heading now straight back towards Cheetah Plains Pan. They're about to pop into the clearing there. This is just too exciting for words. Isn't it wonderful? You right there, Brian? Okay, we're going to switch off again, let them listen. So those impala, the luckiest impala in the Sabi sand tonight, they've got away from the wild dogs and the lions, obviously. Isn't this special? It's just so gorgeous. Now, interestingly, they will tell you that wild dogs are the most efficient hunters, that they will kill 8 out of 10 times that they chase. What they don't tell you, though, is that they don't often push through on their attacks. And it means that they probably only kill 3 out of 10 times they see something and decide to see if they're going to chase it or not. What they don't do, similarly to other animals, what they seem to work out much more quickly is whether or not they're going to catch an animal. And so if they're not going to catch, they just stop. And then they try again, something else. And so that would be classified, I guess, as a failure. Ryan, come in. Ryan, they haven't gone out into the clearings. They're now static just on the eastern fringe of that clearing. I found something in there, probably a few beetles. Yeah, you'll get them now to your north. Phew! Isn't that fun? Let me just go a little bit forward and get the whole pack in view. It's so cool. Now, I suspected this might happen, you know. They've eaten so much today. Well, just from, I don't know what they've eaten, but they had such big fat bellies. They still do. There's no problem, Ryan. No problem at all. And I thought, yes, they might try and hunt, but then I thought maybe they wouldn't be that enthusiastic about it. And as darkness falls, of course, they will probably just settle for the night. They've had their kind of exercise. They've done a bit of a run. They've probably run. Let me work it out for you. They've gone down there, through there, and up and around. Not much more than 1.5 kilometers to maybe 2 kilometers, around about a mile and a bit. Slug. A wonderful question from someone called Slug. Thank you, Slug. That's a very, what shall we say, a short and sweet Twitter handle. Very evocative. Slug, you say, do they have some kind of formation when they hunt? Other than the alpha male leading the hunt, no, they don't really. For many years we thought that there was some kind of coordinated attack, but research done on dogs, especially collared dogs and dogs with subcutaneous chips, shows that the running is actually fairly random. So they saw that herd of impala. The alpha picked one or two got distracted by the others, and the pups just kind of ran in from behind. And apparently they get distracted very easily when they're on the hunt. And so, no, there's no real sort of formation other than the alpha male and the alpha female leading the hunt as it starts. But as it then progresses, there's not really a huge amount of coordination. Now, let me just describe the atmosphere to you slightly. Obviously there's the sniff of wet, damp dog in the air, but it's quite a fresh, watery sort of a smell on the back end or front end of this, on the front end of this cold front. The air is almost free of dust, and the atmosphere is charged now, of course, because of these dogs, but it's now starting to really kind of calm. and I don't think these dogs are going to do much else. The other thing is that we have to pull out now because it's starting to get dark. So we'll sit here for another 2 minutes. We will not put light on them. And Paul, you say, is beautiful comment for this, for what's happened here. You say they go from attack to relax very quickly. They do. And they did exactly the opposite when they got up, of course. They went from complete relax to chasing buffalo in the matter of about, well, I don't know, 3.5 microseconds. Just gorgeous stuff. I can't believe we've had so long with them today. If anything comes past here, they'll almost certainly grab it. But I think they're probably going to head into some thick bush where they will rest for the night. And of course they won't sleep as soundly as they did during the day. The night time, of course, for wild dogs, the most dangerous time. They're not nocturnal. It's the time when the lions and the hyenas move, and the leopards. And so these guys will have to remain pretty aware of what's going on throughout the night. All right, this is going to be the end of the wild dogs, everybody. Say goodbye to this magnificent pack. We will, with any luck, see them again maybe tomorrow. I suspect they'll be gone by the time we can get to Cheetah Plains in the dawn light. But let's see, we might be lucky. So from the wild dogs of Cheetah Plains, goodbye.
Have a look at that incredible sight, at that little cub fast asleep on the tree. And luckily for us, it seems as though a couple of the lions have started feasting on the buffalo. Well, they haven't yet opened up the stomach and removed the intestines, which is normally one of the first things that they do. But I suppose when you're the Nkuhumas and have been as successful as what they have been, there's no need to rush this process. And I think that's why they are being so relaxed, because if somebody else does come through and try and steal their meal, there's always opportunity to catch another buffalo. But let's listen to this little cub as it fights with one of the adults. Being very cheeky, trying to tear into the rump, but not doing a very good job, I'm afraid. But you can see, desperately trying, and I think that's the only way that these little cubs, if they do find a little gap, that they're able to get through that hide, is by tearing quite quickly and hoping that they just rip small pieces open, and then hopefully after doing that, they'll eventually create a big enough gap that they can feast on the flesh. Now, you can also see where they've started to open up the stomach. They've managed to get through the first bit of the hide. Can you see that? And you can even see how thick it is. Look at how incredible that is. That's a couple of, maybe an inch or two thick. Well, maybe not even that much, but it's pretty thick, probably about 2 centimeters or so. And then you can see the stomach. Then that's just the stomach, the outside layer. But I wonder if their next move is going to be to pierce through that now that there's a big hole. Now, Gareth, it's great to hear from you again, and I'm so glad that you've got into asking all these questions. Now, you'd like to know, in my experience, if the Nkuhumas are very, specifically specialists in hunting buffaloes, because they are indeed successful, like you mentioned. Well, let's just quickly go back here. I just want to watch this little cub as it growls around. Now, I agree with your statement, and in my experience, they are very, very successful. Oh, look at this cub now climbing on top of the buffalo. Gareth, I'll get back to your question. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. Now, there's obviously not a lot of room where everybody else is sitting on the edge of the buffalo. So the only other option is, well, to go and climb on top of it. But unfortunately, that didn't last for long. So let me get back to your question quickly then, Garrett. So it's typically in the winter months when the buffalo, or the dry season, let's refer to it as the dry and the wet season. So we get our rain in the summer. So normally from early spring, from September right through up until about February we can get rain. And then in the dry season coming into autumn and the winter months, we don't usually have any. Oh, a little bit of a dispute there. You can see the sort of, not jealousy, that's the wrong word that I wanted to use there, of course, but getting a bit antsy with that other cub getting too close. Now, in these drier seasons, these buffalo are so weak. We saw earlier how you could see their ribs, how you could see their hips. They're not in great condition. So yes, now they're taking as many as they can, but it's going to change. As we come into summer, the buffalo are going to be stronger. They're going to be a lot more difficult to take down. So we may start seeing the lions feeding on things like impala lambs. It wouldn't be and not common. Same thing with warthog piglets. They'll start to take them. We saw that a lot last year. As well as taking things down like kudu. Kudu often form a large sort of part of the lion's diet. But it all really just depends. Now, looking at this carcass and looking at the carcass that we saw earlier that was covered in maggots quite close to Buffelshoek Dam, Samantha, you were wondering how long does a carcass take before it becomes spoiled and can no longer be eaten? Now, the answer to that is never. It never gets to the point where nothing will feast on it. So even a lion, at the moment the lions are spoiled though, because there is an abundance of food around, that they are able to be picky. And we clearly saw this a couple of weeks ago, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where the lions came across a carcass. It was riddled with maggots like the one we just saw. They sort of tugged on it a little bit. Then they moved on, and we came and went through a thick bit of vegetation. They came across a buffalo that had been stabbed by another buffalo and was dying because of those injuries. He was bleeding out, essentially. They also tugged on him, and then they heard the distress calls of, I think it was 2 females and one of the Birmingham boys taking down a buffalo, and it was distressing. They then left that second buffalo and went to the young calf which the others had caught, and they'd fed on those. They didn't go back to the other 2 carcasses. How incredible is that? But that's only because of this period where there's an abundance of food around. In the summer months, I can guarantee that would have gone completely different. They would have feasted. They either would have gone to the buffalo that was being taken down, and they would have come back and feasted on the others. Now, can you hear that? Now that's her using the carnassial shear. That's her scissoring with her teeth, trying to either cut through the flesh to get into the better parts to feed on. Or what she could also be doing is, this is normally when it gets to the end of a buffalo carcass and there isn't much meat, is they try and remove the chunks of flesh from the skin, and they often do the carnassial shear is what it's called. But Samantha, just to get back to your question, they will eat rotting meat, the vultures, the hyenas, the lions, the jackals. The only one that might be a little bit reluctant to feast upon a rotting carcass is a cheetah. But even then, I can promise you, if that cheetah is starving and there's nothing else for it to eat, it's not going to say no to a carcass. There we go. It seems as though she was successful, and she's managed to get through to the hide now and feasting on the rump, which is one of the first areas that they normally start eating at. And of course, that young cub is taking full advantage, and obviously learning as well from that lioness on how to do the carnassial shear and developing its own technique to get inside the carcass. And then if we look on the left, we've got another young cub who's biting around the joint of where the elbow, I suppose, would be on the buffalo, and trying to tear into the flesh from that end, but struggling, as you can see, fighting with the carcass. You can even see where they've been chewing on that poor buffalo's ear at one point. You can just see how the hair has been removed. There we go. They were chewing on that at some point. I don't know if I'd like... Can you zoom in anymore? Is that it, David? Look at... Can you see the ticks inside his ear? It's quite difficult to see, but I don't know if you can maybe see it, but there's actually... Its ear is completely infested with ticks. That is terrible, those big lumps inside there. My goodness. I'm glad that we don't get ticks deep down inside our ear like that. That wouldn't be very pleasant. Now, I'm sure a few of you are wondering if those ticks have arrived now, or were they there on the buffalo before it passed on. And it's actually very healthy for animals to have tick populations living on them. You won't find an unhealthy animal with very many ticks. And of course, like humans, and we often hear and we see on our cats and dogs as well, if you're living out in the wilderness, whenever you go into the bushes, the doctor always says to you, you must remember to check for ticks when you've come back, sort of behind your legs, behind your knee, to check around your ankles, to check in any warm area, so your groin, underneath your arms. And it's the same with the animals. The ticks like to go to the warm and the moist places, so between the back legs, underneath any folds of skin, so between their legs and their chest, in their ears, under their neck. You can see them all, they've congregated over there. So it's the same thing for the animals. So even though this buffalo was on the thin side, it obviously wasn't too sick that the ticks obviously needed to leave the buffalo. Normally when you see that they've got diseases and things, they'll have very, very, very few ticks on them. Now it's getting to the point where it's getting quite dark now, and you can see there's a little bit of light that I've put onto the lines, but what I've done is I've put one of the LED lights on, so I'm not shining the spotlight. So it's not one direct source of light, and I'm not shining directly on them. It's bouncing off the ground, and those rays are spread quite a bit, but we won't stay here for too long. And this is a personal opinion, because none of these cubs, well, there's only one set of cubs that are 6 months old. The rest of them are still too young, and we generally don't spot on them with a proper spotlight until they're about 6 months. And one of the reasons is that sometimes this light can draw and attract predators or highlight the predators. And I would hate if a clan of hyena came through here with these young cubs, and we were of course going to be the reason that these cubs were spotted. So that's one of the reasons why we don't shine a spotlight on young animals. You'll see often with leopards, if they're young leopard cubs and the cub and the kill is on the ground, a lot of guides won't actually spot on the kill. But if it's hoisted, obviously it's a different story, because a hyena can't climb up a tree. We know how hyenas like to follow leopards and lions around, of course. So I think we're going to just have a little longer look for a couple of minutes, but then we are going to move away and leave these Nkuhumas. But for now it's all right. It's still relatively light. It's obviously just because the clouds have come over. You can see. Ooh. It's the two cubs having an argument about who gets to feast on the best spot. But like I said, for now it's alright. We've got a couple more minutes that we can hang around with them for before the sun actually completely disappears and we lose all the light. I can see, what I'd normally try and do is I normally try and gauge it on my eyesight. If I can see about 50 meters into the distance, then I reckon it's still okay. But as soon as I can't see further than that, then I think that it's the time to leave them until these Nkuhumas are a little bit older. But like I said, that's just a personal preference. We're all different. And you can see that lion cub's actually struggling a little bit. There is a small hole from where they removed the sensitive bits of that buffalo. But buffalo's foot is in the way, and every now and then you see, it getting squashed. Now, Carrie, you were wondering if it would be easier for these lions just to claw straight through the buffalo, and unfortunately not. So their claws are designed for gripping and holding on nice and tight, but they haven't got strong claws like you see on a cheetah or on a wild dog or a hyena or anything that would use their claws to dig. You see them, they're able to retract their claws and protect them. So they're not strong enough at all to dig through that hide. That hide is so tough. So the easiest way is to gnaw through the hide and make a little incision, and then of course tear it open from that. And I reckon by tomorrow morning they would have opened up this carcass, especially once Mr. Nkuhuma decides to come around and have a bite to eat. But he doesn't seem to be too interested at the moment. I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to move forward. I'm going to leave these lions and the cubs eat, but I think we can go up ahead and spotlight the other adults because they don't seem to have any cubs around. It's now getting very dark all of a sudden, so let's just move forward. But thank you guys. We'll try and get to you in the morning. Right, let's go see what Mr. Nkuhuma is up to. You can see his head is down, let's put some lights on. Where's my spotlight? My spotlight is here. Some of the cubs are fast asleep. They're not interested at all. They must have had a very busy day. Actually, I'm gonna do this. Hello guys. Oh, no, sorry, my bad. I thought I put it in neutral. I obviously didn't. Sorry, David. Now, even with the adults, I actually haven't even bothered. I'm just going to adjust the LED light. I haven't even bothered with a spotlight, just because relatively close proximity. And I find that these LEDs work really nicely, and they're not as harsh on the animals. Now, I know some of you haven't ever been on a safari, but when we shine the spotlight, we don't actually shine directly into the animal's eyes. We shine on somewhere else on the body to illuminate the face. Because you can imagine if you were to shine these spotlights, which have got quite a few lumens, it would actually hurt their eyes too. So something like this, these LEDs really come in handy where they're a lot less harsh. Now he's getting up. Let's see what he's going to do. And I also find that these LEDs cast some nice shadows. Rebecca just said they look beautiful. So you'll see me just every now and then turning the LED. But he looks very interested in this female. Who are we over here? Now he's phlegm and grimacing. He did test her to try and pick up her scent. Now what's the verdict, mister? She doesn't look very impressed by that notion. Perhaps you need to tread cautiously, Nkuhuma. No, Niki's brain is working overtime now as he tries to think about his next move. But first, a big stretch. He's rubbing up against the tree, which is typical of this male, and as he turns his tail up and he sprays the urine, we definitely know that he's marking his territory. Hello, big boy. And now he's just going to sit back down and perhaps have a nap again. Yes, that's exactly what he's doing. Now, I don't know where the Birminghams have come from, where him and Mr. Tinyo had walked from. Because I don't think they were on... I wonder who was here last night. David, you and Jamie had a male lion. Who was it?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember who exactly was... David seems to think it was maybe Tinyo. Oh, there we go. You were spot on. It was indeed Tinyo that Jamie and David had last night. But Mr. Nkuhuma wasn't around, as far as I'm aware. So I wonder where he's come from. And it's nice to see, though, that these boys are out and expanding their territories. Because when I got here, I only saw them with the Nkuhumas. And I think that they realized, oh, we actually have to go out and do a bit of work and go out and mark our territories if we want to keep this area. big arguments going on back at the carcass, but it sounds like it's just the little ones fighting again. And it's going to get worse and worse as they age. And maybe that's why these lionesses are taking a bit of a break. Maybe they're just like, no, we don't need that in our lives anymore. We'd rather go and feast when the little ones have got a full belly and they can sort of eat in peace. Because every time we've seen any arguments happen around the carcass, they always seem to be instigated by the young Nkuhuma cubs. Can you hear all that noise going on at the back? Now, of course, they've gone quiet. Isn't this lovely? But it looks like these lions, unfortunately, are going to rest for a little while longer. So what I would really like to do, I'm just trying to look for all my goodies down here. I would really like to move on from these lions now. I think we've had fantastic time with them. And let's go see if we can find anything interesting that's lurking around after dark. Now, I'm just trying to rearrange a couple of things. I've got wires hooking on wires, and I want my spotlight cable to come out a bit further. There we go. Now I'm a little bit more organized. But thank you, Nkuhumas. It's been wonderful. Let's turn the lights on, and let's go see what else we can find. Bye-bye, guys. But we'll be back tomorrow to have a look. Oh, wonderful. So I believe that James has made the long journey back from Cheetah Plains. Let's go see what he's going to be looking for now.
At the moment, everybody, I have indeed returned from Cheetah Plains, and what we've got is, remember the wildebeest we started the show with? Well, they're all in front of us here with the zebra, and I'm just trying to get out of the way, get out of their way, basically, because they're a little bit intimidated by the lights that are on. Sorry, I'm just going to turn those, there we go, we can have those on. But they really do get completely flummoxed by the sight of a light. And as most of you will know, of course, doesn't matter which part of the world you are, all kind of herbivores are, like deer, are completely and utterly astonished by nighttime lights. And the ones here, of course, they're all over here. We're on Cheetah Cutline, which is the eastern fringe of Djuma. And the reason everything is kind of here is because it's clear. So they're able to see what's coming to get them if they want to. Unfortunately, there's a car coming towards me, which could result in a large accident if I turn all my lights off. But we'll just keep going stoically and hopefully turn off this road before we hit anything else. Where's the turn off, Brian? It's coming up, isn't it? Anyway, what an afternoon we've had. Hasn't it been special? We're back on radio, which means we can hear the dulcet, quite deep tones of Rebecca Christensen. She, of course, back from leave today, straight into the hot seat. And what a day to begin with. Wild dogs. Rebecca says she will try and talk in a high-pitched voice, everybody. No, Rebecca, there's no need at all. Your husky voice is quite satisfactory as it is. Right, just turn here. Now, one of the great... Side lights, thank you, Brian. Brian was just whispering there. There we go. One of the great advantages of or disadvantages of these spotlights is that they get very hot. And one day, this is of course night time, so it's storytelling time now in case we don't find anything. One day I was at Ngala Private Game Reserve, up to the north of where we are here, and the tracker and ranger had just dropped their guests off, and what used to happen was that the ranger used to get out of the car, take the rifle, go and put it in the safe, and then meet the tracker at the back of the lodge, and the tracker would drive around. And this tracker took his spotlight and he just put it down next to him like that on a blanket, and then carried on, drove around, didn't notice the sort of gentle smell of hot wool, or probably nylon, next to him, took his cooler box off the car and went to put it away, and was having a chat with his friend when the general manager came out of his office and said, "Fire! Fire!" And the Land Rover was on fire as a result of the spotlight being left on the super flammable acrylic / nylon blanket. And so, you know, another hazard of the job, Brian, is operating this very hot spotlight. But I do it, you know, I do it without fear. Yes, it's very, very brave of me. The other thing I'm afraid we did see, which we didn't see with you because it was so brief and it was all in the dark, was a spotted eagle owl today being chased by some drongos. It leapt into the air out of a tree and was chased by a whole lot of drongos, and eventually it got away, but I'm afraid it all happened rather too fast for us to call you over, especially as it would have had to been done on WhatsApp. It's a nice word, that, don't you think, Brian? What's up? Oh, there's an elephant just to the right. We're just going to drive straight past it. There we go. Hello, Junkie. You're a new viewer, and it's a very easy question for me to answer from you. You say, do I prefer day or nighttime safaris, and am I not afraid at night? Junkie, I'm not afraid at night, but that's just because I've been in and around this area for a long time. It's not because I'm particularly brave or stoic or anything else like that. It's just the time that I've spent out here. If I was on foot, Junkie, I would be absolutely terrified out of my wits to be walking around here, especially on a windy, moonless night like this one. It would be very dangerous indeed for a human being to be out here on foot in the night time. Not during the day if you are well trained. Now, I far prefer driving around dawn and dusk than I do to the night time. I've never been the hugest fan of the night safari. I'm not sure why. Many people love night safaris. I guess I just prefer the fact that in the day I can see distance, I can see far, and I think that's a throwback to our evolutionary history. You know, it's we reckon that's why human beings are scared of the dark, is because, of course, way back when our ancestors had just sort of leapt out of the trees, as it were, and were heading into the plains of East Africa, they of course had to be scared of the dark, because that's when their major predators, the lions and the hyenas, were active. And I think, much the same as me, I quite like the fact that during the day I can see, and while I'm interpreting that as preferring the day, I think you'll find that it's probably something deep-seated in maybe even in my reptilian brain, saying, well, you don't want to be able not to see far into the distance, because then you cannot see what's coming to eat you. But, Junkie, most of the time there's nothing coming to eat us, which is excellent. Now, Taylor would like to tell you about what she's going to do tonight. Tell her to tell you a nighttime story. I'm sure it'll be a good one. That's called tossing.
James, that's a big request. A nighttime story? Now I need to try and think of one. You see, James wasn't specific as to what nighttime story he wanted me to tell. David, give me a topic and let's see if I've got any stories. My brain has gone, it's shut down for some bizarre reason, and I can't even think of one story, which is unusual because we know I love to tell a good story. Okay, someone in the bush at night. Oh my goodness, I'm under pressure and I don't know what to do. I just want to find a chameleon so I can talk about the chameleon now. Oh, okay, so Rebecca fed the question in my ear about James telling the story about the vehicle that caught fire. And I also experienced something similar when I actually had just started guiding and somebody had left their spotlight on, but it was a brand new vehicle, like brand new. I think it was about a week old, and burnt it down to a crisp. You can imagine though that Ranger was not very popular and had an unfortunate series of unlucky events because a couple of luckily he kept his job, and a few weeks later, or it was a month or something afterwards, he then drove another, like a big taxi-like vehicle. Like, I don't know if you've seen the taxis in South Africa, a minibus, there we go, that's the word I'm looking for. And well, he reversed that and then drove it into a tree, and a branch came through the window. So now that's what I call unlucky. But I can't think of a good nighttime story. I don't know why. I've had some interesting ones. Have I told you about the stories of me bumping into the lions on the pathways at night? Maybe I haven't, but maybe I have. I'll just tell them again though. So, because it doesn't seem like there's chameleons around here. But so a couple of times, guests would ask me as we were walking back to the rooms about, have you ever seen anything on the pathways? And I'd go, no, it's not very common, occasionally something. And it would always be when someone would say, and any lions? And then I'd go, no. And as I would say no, we'd come around the corner and there'd be a pride lion sitting on the pathway. But I'm not too worried about them. They normally moved off. You give a clap of the hands or a stamp of the feet and off they scuttle, which was good. And I've encountered buffalo a few times on the pathways, but they were nice buffalo. They also just ran off, thank goodness, not like the one that I could. It was obviously the grumpiest buffalo in the Sabi Sands, the one that charged me while I was on foot looking for insects for James while he was in the tent. Now, speaking of insects, I'm looking for any beetles that are on the ground. Where are you? We've been seeing a lot of twin spot beetles. Now I'm hoping we're going to see maybe another ground beetle, maybe a velvet ant. You know what I am seeing flying around? Let's see if we can see it land. David, I know it's difficult. Can you see this thing? Yes, you can. Wow, that's very impressive. I don't know if you got a glimpse of that little eye as it was flying around. It's disappeared now, but there's quite a few antlions, adult antlions around, which is quite nice. And I think I've showed you a couple. We often see them here at night, in the mornings after they've fallen into the vehicles. Then I pick them up and then release them again. But that one didn't want to stick around. Where are all the animals this evening? It's a nice night. Oh, here we go. Here's something. Hello, beetle. There's a beetle. It's running away. What beetle is that? Oh, that is, where did you go? There it is. That is a two-spot beetle. Quite common around here, and that's quite a large one too. You can see massive antennae. Probably out looking for something to eat. And my highlight of these beautiful beetles has to be when we did the safari marathons, when James was in the Mara and we had the first bit of rain and we saw them mating. So I think that this is probably a female. Typically with insects, the females are larger than the males. And that was quite fun. And we did see a couple of ones that had been squashed by, I don't know what, whether it was an elephant or a vehicle, I'm unsure. But remember the sighting we had where the ants, though, were making use of the beetle and they were feasting upon it. And that's what I love, is that absolutely nothing gets wasted out here. Let's see what it's going to do. No, don't go too fast. You've got to try and keep up with your little beetle. Just scurrying along, checking all the little crevices. Now, I wonder what it even feasts on. I'm actually not sure if it feeds on other insects or if it eats vegetation. I must admit, for some bizarre reason, that fact has slipped my mind. So perhaps you can give me a helping hand this evening, seeing as though my brain seems to have switched off. Maybe one of you could help me out and tell me, what does a twin spot beetle eat? Or two-spot beetle, as they're also known as. And you can either do that by hashtagging Safari Live on Twitter, or you can send us an email, questions@WildEarthTV. And I would very much appreciate your assistance, is that I think obviously the file cabinets are full, and maybe I read something new today. I was actually reading about chameleons this afternoon, And I think that obviously some of the twin spot beetle information I have has been thrown out, and then a couple more files have been added of the chameleons. So I'm now itching to find a chameleon so I can tell you all about these wonderful things that I learned that I didn't even know that they could do. But I'm not going to tell you just yet until we find one of those wonderful animals. I think James is behind me. He's following me. Stalker. What's he doing back there? Maybe it's not even him. It could be someone else. And I could just be falsely accusing James, of course. Oh my goodness, we don't want to disorientate the impala. Now, let's see if we can have a look. There's about 150 million impala here. I'm not going to shine directly on them. I'm just going to put my spotlight up slightly. Can you see all of them? And they all come out into the open, obviously to seek refuge and not to, of course, hide away in the bushes so that the predators can sneak up to them. And that's why I keep wanting to come here at sunset when we eventually get another sunset, because we can see beautiful silhouettes of the animals and we'll go past them. And I don't know if you've ever seen it before. Maybe you've seen videos, or perhaps you could have seen it with us as we try and dim our lights as we go. Oh, solifuge! Hang on, I got distracted, but I found a solifuge. Now we need to just do a turn. No, come back here. Okay, I'm going to keep my eye on the solifuge just because I can see where it is. Where did it go? Now I just want to dim my lights and let this vehicle come past us, and we shall try and find it again. Good evening. Let's look for the solifuge. Now, probably going to come back out on the road again. We know they like to hunt out in the open. Where did you go? Oh, I think I've lost it. Where did it go? Christina, thank you for answering and helping me with the search to what do twin spot beetles eat. Apparently they eat aphids and other little creatures, which is fantastic. Now, I don't know where the solifuge gone. I mean, they move quickly, but they can't move that quick. They can't disappear that fast. I'm very disappointed that I didn't get to see my solifuge. It was moved too quickly, and perhaps it found a mound that was full of termites and is now having a great dinner. I'm not sure, and I hopefully will try and find another one so you can have a look at what a solifuge looks like, but we'll just have to wait till next time. Now it's come to that time of the drive where myself and David are going to have to say goodbye to you, but I hope you enjoyed the Nkuhumas and everything else, and all the other wonderful creatures we saw along the way. It's been great, but we'll see you bright and early for the sunrise safari. Good night. Let's head over to James.
I'm not sure how bright it's going to be early tomorrow morning, everybody. Rain predicted, but of course it was predicted today, and nothing has fallen. Brian, you've had 2 spots of rain, haven't you?
Yes.
Yes.
About 3.
3? Good grief.
I know.
Now, we're looking desperately for a chameleon. That was a small scrub hare running terrifiedly across the front of the vehicle. Brian has been quite obsessive, I have to tell you, about a chameleon on the way home. We have got exactly 90 seconds to find it. Brian, I'm going to drive a little bit faster to the next bushel. There's nothing on that bushel, nor on this one. No. How very bad, how very sad, how very, very dare us. Please forget I said that, everyone. That's the problem with being live, Brian. You cannot edit what you've said. Yeah, you can't edit what you've sung either. No chameleons, I'm afraid, everybody. And just remember, at night time, I find it very difficult to look into your eyes while I'm trying to find animals with a spotlight. Alright, that's going to be it from us this evening. What a very special time of it we've had. Began before drive, of course, with the lioness killing the buffalo. And we headed straight across to Cheetah Plains. Marvellous time with those wild dogs on the hunt. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, John.
A big thank you to the thumb, the mustachioed thumb. There it is. To Rebecca and Kirsten in the final control with Louise and Jerry and Taylor and David. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.